This is what we're talking about. Proactive sourcing. Very, very good. Let's hear it.
Be resourceful in figuring out how to acquire that type of inventory.
Yes, we have to hunt it down. How do we acquire it?
My business is by going to buy-sell trade stores.
No! Hey, what's going on, loungers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Basa T, and I'm a 20+ year importer and product developer. So today we're going to be doing a very big Sunday episode, and it's going to be a little bit different of a format. So we're going to be doing a case study first, because I know a lot of you guys have really resonated with the case study videos, and then we'll be getting into the critique afterwards, okay? Because there are some of you guys who are only here for the critique version. So for that, I will leave a timestamp in the description below. But the truth is that I actually do a lot of these shop talk classes, but you guys don't show up for those, who are the same people who also accuse me of only making critique videos. But now we're gonna have a timestamp so that when I check the analytics later, that will tell the story, and I'll know exactly who actually stays for what. So to kick off the shop talk portion of this video, I want to throw up these numbers real quick because it really hit home for you guys, okay? The whole Amazon versus eBay numbers over here. So once again, to recap real quick, there's about 130 million users on eBay and 230 million users on Amazon. But the amount of sales that actually occurs on eBay is only about $35 billion, while the amount of sales on Amazon is $360 billion. So when you really think about it, there's only about 75% more people on Amazon versus eBay. But there is 10 times more sales going on Amazon as opposed to eBay. And which is why I think that, look, if you're going to get into this e-commerce game, eventually the destination should be Amazon, where all the sales occur. I am in no way, shape, or form loyal to Amazon. It's where the sales are, and that's where we go. So definitely, I think that if you are making it right now in eBay, you have a lot of potential in Amazon. So recently I posted up my Discord channel. I had a chance to talk to a lot of you one-on-one in person. And you know what? One of the conversations that is recurring over and over again, I would say, you know, with like about 9 out of 10 of you guys, is the realization that, you know, after watching that whole Don't Die in the Woods episode, you realize that, like, you know, the solutions are not as profound as people normally make it out to be, right? So what that means is you don't really need that crazy of an idea to get into private labeling. And one of the biggest issues is that, you know, you might not have an idea at the moment, but once you see an idea, it's just such a, like, a slap yourself in the forehead aha moment that, like, what a simple situation, what a simple solution that could have turned into a lot of profit. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about travel pillows, right? So this is my travel pillow. Okay, I have a couple of them, and we all know what a travel pillow is, right? It looks like this, and this one is actually a little tight on me because I'm about, like, I'm a little over 6'1" in person. So, you know, this thing has a lot of angle to it, right? Ultimately, it's still better than nothing, but you still wake up with the neck cramps. And oftentimes you see people actually, you know, end up doing the side sleeping thing, right? If they could get like a window seat on a plane or a Greyhound bus or something like that. So we're going to come back to talk about this one in a second. But what I want to show you is the one that I found on Amazon over here, right? So what is the solution? The solution is actually right here, right? Do something a little bit more ergonomic, a little bit higher to reduce that, you know, neck angle so it doesn't feel so bad anymore. And what does he do? He does about 355 units sold. Is he ranked really high? No, he's not ranked high at all. He's 189 out of his hyper niche over here. And what is the monthly revenue? $1,400. Okay. So when you think about, like, you know, if he's taking it just a little bit over like a quarter in profit at the end of all these sales, then it still brings them about like $5,000 every single month. And this is exactly what I want for you guys, right? To put your time and effort, all your spare time, into something that compounds over time, right? Don't do the reselling stuff where it's all about hard labor. If you were to stop your business, if you were to stop scavenging and constantly sourcing stuff, what would happen to your business? While when you're thinking about doing something like this, what's happening here. It's more like every single day he's just monitoring his inventory. And when the time comes, I need to go ahead and calculate maybe about like 2 or 3 months, depending on lead times to produce the item, as well as shipping times to receive the item, so that he has the right amount of quantity to keep this listing going. And it's nothing crazy. It's about like 355 units sold, as I showed you before. So look at his innovation here. At the end of the day, again, right, from the Don't Die in the Woods episode to this particular episode, what are we looking at as terms of complexity in the item? That's what I really want to hit home for you guys. So what did he do? He threw in, you know, an eye mask here along with this cushion, this neck rest, right? And it's just a better shape. It's more contoured towards his shoulders. It's better contoured towards his chin, his neck, and it's not doing as much angle. Like, there's no way you're going to get like, you know, perfectly fixated, like straight, right? But it's still a lot better than the travel pillow that I have, which is the classic style. So what I want to showcase here, that's so important. Then, oh yeah, I almost forgot. Did you guys pick up Jungle Scout and Keepa so that we could look at what is happening over here? So a couple of things that we want to dive into, right? What's really important is like, how long has this been going on for? So he did do a little sale to bring it down to $33.99, but he roughly sells it for like $39.99, right? But if we go back all 66 days, which is the whole history of this whole item, he started this when, like somewhere around June, like end of June, and then he's been selling it just for this long, and he's already at 355. So this is a very young listing. You see what I'm saying? And then he only has like 26 feedbacks over here. Now, when we jump into the feedbacks, I want to show you that they're all Amazon Vine customer reviews, but that doesn't matter because that still gets him the social confirmation that he needs so that people are willing to pull the trigger. And as I said, okay, you want to have a listing like this because you want to have ample ammo to keep going, because that's the only way success could ever beget more success. This guy clearly knows what he's doing. This is definitely not one of his first items because look, he already has A+ content over here. But when you look at all of his photos that he put together, right? Yes, this is definitely professional photography, but it's worth your time to go do this because you're just going to do one listing and he's hoping to sell this item for what? The next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Let me ask you this question, right? Rather than constantly jumping on brands, thinking about trends and stuff, when is a travel pillow going to be obsolete? I'm going to argue not anytime soon for a very, very long time, right? So look at the innovation that's put into it. It's just a slightly better travel pillow. So whatever your, you know, gripe is with the world, whatever problem that you have, whatever, you know, hobbies and things like that, you think about how to solve common issues. Okay. And when you come up with very simple solutions that you could build products around, you could definitely sell it for a premium here. Okay. So another thing that I wanted to show you guys is that let's just jump directly into his store. So his name is Your Next Tour the store or whatever. Okay. Sorry, it's not a .com. I almost said .com. So Your Next Tour. So why is this such a weird name? Because usually you want to come up with like slightly spelled, slightly strange names and stuff for the sake of trademarking, right? Because every single item that you do on Amazon, you need to trademark this item so that you have brand protection. You know how like people don't get away with copyright infringement because of 0 strikes on eBay? Right, same idea here. Now you're in the big leagues, right? And if you could get an item that you can sell on Amazon, this is what we would do. So let's just jump into the store. And I want to show you why I highlight this particular seller for our case study today. Because when you look at what he does, this is his whole shop. And what does he do? He does this travel pillow. What else do you do? Adult travel pillows, kids travel pillows, travel pillow and blanket combo. So he also has this neck cervical pillow, right? And then he also has like some kind of a leg pillow. And that's it. That's all he does, okay? This one does even better than the one with the eye mask. I personally would have bought the higher one with the eye mask. I probably wouldn't get this one because, you know, I just don't see the use for it because I like the plain stuff. But look, 416 sold, not bad. $8,000 in revenue. So if he takes home just even a quarter of that, that's like a good $2,000. And again, it's not ranked something super high. It's not in the top 60, top 50. This is ranked 102 in the hyper niche, but it's still a good 5-digit item in his home and kitchen category, right? So when I come back over here and then we look at, the rest of the items that he has this one, and he has it all in all sorts of different colors, right? So while he's selling this one, you might see limited time deal. He runs a sale every now and then for colors that aren't selling as well. So he's got this one at $20.51. But the black one is definitely selling the best, and he's not coming down on the price on that one. So this one's $35.99, right? So this is what I want to highlight for you guys, right? Definitely spend more time into looking at items where it really compounds over time and it has a chance to really snowball into more sales. So when we look at how many units that he has sold, this one's at 2,700 sold, right? So look, this is $56,000. This is even better than the other one, but this one is also ranked at 31 over here. So that's a pretty good ranking. Now, the issue is come up with a decent item and then have the knowledge and know-how to really snowball a listing. And that is exactly why my channel exists. And this is exactly why a lot of people have asked for my help. And we have developed our own website, and it's called PegasusBlueprint.com. So let me show you guys what that is. So for everyone who follows the channel, you guys already know I've been teasing this for quite some time. This is very close to the final iteration of what the website looks like. I'm going to say this is like maybe around 92% ready. So all the payment gateways work, as well as a lot of the links work, where basically, you could schedule appointments and stuff, as well as see all the services that I offer. I haven't written any blogs yet, so that's one of the big things that's missing. So be kind. There's still a couple of maybe a little bit lorem ipsum somewhere where I gotta fill in stuff a little bit better. But generally, yeah, a good 90% portion of the website is ready to go. So I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit over here to show you guys that basically I offer a 4-step, framework within a framework kind of service, so that it covers all of the bases in order to help somebody bring their ideas to real life and start producing and selling evergreen items. It is not just about producing an item, but also about snowballing listings so that we can have long-term sales, right? So the whole idea of this is exactly what I show in the case studies, where sellers go through short-term efforts for long-term gains. At the bottom of the website, I also have a submit your question kind of section, right? So anybody who has a question or a video suggestion and you want to see something reviewed, or you want to, tell me something in private, I've had a lot of people ask me like, hey, Peg, what's the email, et cetera, et cetera. So instead, you could come to PegasusBlueprint.com and then you could submit all your stuff over here. So yeah, guys, when you have a chance, check out the website and let's get back into the show. All right, guys, so let's get into the critique portion of the video. So today's channel we're actually going to be reviewing on is Mogi Beth, okay? So I want to be very clear first, okay? I never pick on what solds, bolos, come thrift with me. I don't really care about those videos. And they're generally video diaries. They're a vlog. They're a representation of somebody's life. There's nothing really to disagree with there. I personally don't do reselling and then, end of story, right? So it would be nitpicky to pick on stuff like that. So generally people who do a lot of that kind of videos, I saw a lot of videos like that from Shed Flips or Becky Park. I don't pick on those creators because they don't get into too much of the nitty gritty of trying to do numbers or advice or things like that. It's just that when I come across it and it gets really egregious, that's when it really hits my radar, okay? So I want to say this first, okay? Pretty much 90%, 92% is really high, okay? That of what Mogi Beth talks about is okay. It's actually decent, right? And it's a little bit better than, common sense advice rewrapped into, professional business advice. And a lot of the numbers and the business theories and the stuff that she says about opportunity costs and this and that, it's spot on actually, okay? So, I don't pick on any of those things. It's two particular videos that really jumped out on me. So number one is this how to become a 6-figure reseller, in tandem with the last video that she just put out about I spent $1,200 on ThreadUp. Okay. And when you put them together, you'll see what I mean, right? There's something very, very catastrophically wrong about the whole thing. So we're going to watch this video together, right? And then I'm going to give you like, my thoughts about the whole thing. And then we're going to break down all of the issues that I see here.
We are still living in the midst of the golden age of reselling. Did you know that the US used clothing market reached $43 billion in 2023?
Okay, immediately I don't like this, okay? Macro numbers have nothing to do with common people like us. What is this? These are macro level numbers, right? What does that mean? If you're not Target, Walmart, you know what I mean? The big people, Amazon, eBay, like this has nothing to do with you, all right? If you are on that solo reseller level to even myself as a private labeler, you could be big fish in a small pond. You could be drowning in a huge saturated market. None of these numbers actually mean anything to laymen, all right? So when people start off their presentations this way, you really, really need a reason to do so. So when I told you guys, look, the eBay versus Amazon market, right, is to let you know that all of the sales is actually over there, and eBay is more of a window shopper in comparison to Amazon. That's where we bring out those macro numbers to really understand, each customer case, right? But this whole thing where we say the whole industry in total is 43. Yeah, but what are you doing in this industry? Yeah, you're flipping a couple of items that you pick up from thrift stores. That's, you know what I mean? Hardly a blip on the radar.
Up from $23 billion in 2018.
Right, you're not doing this, like what she's showing in this B-roll. Like does your warehouse look like this? How do these numbers apply to you?
Specific pocket of time in which it's really possible to run a thriving solo e-commerce business. If you think about it, 30 years ago, eBay didn't exist.
So Mogi has been doing just the YouTube channel about reselling for 7 years. I don't know how long she's been reselling for, but just YouTube alone with reselling has been 7 years. And there's actually, not that much transformation in her business from 7 years ago till now. So I don't know if you could really use the word thrive. I think it's more like afloat.
So if you wanted to run a pre-owned clothing business,
that part's just my opinion.
You have to do it in a brick and mortar location and sell just to your local market. And in 30 years from now, I really think that AI could completely transform reselling so that it looks nothing like it does now. So I do think it's a good idea to get in while the going is good, but there's one problem. The going is so good that it has become more competitive than ever before.
You just said to get, like, isn't that kind of contradicting?
I started reselling 7 years ago. It was much easier to sell clothing brands that you'd come across commonly at the thrift store. Nowadays, a lot of those brands are oversaturated on places like Poshmark and eBay. So weighing out both the incredible opportunity of reselling today with the increasingly competitive landscape, I wanted to pose this thought experiment. If I wanted to go from 0 to 100...
Yo, we just moved on to another question. Instead of... If something is of great opportunity on one side and then the other side of the scale is of great saturation, then that cancels itself, right? And then we just moved on to something else.
$1,000 in sales in 2025, what would I do? And this video is my answer to that question. Of course, and I cannot state this strongly enough, this is just my answer to the question. It is not the answer to the question. I would be really curious to hear what your answer to this question is in the
Okay, so you guys already know my answer, right? It would be to do neck travel pillows. That's what it would be, right? And immediately I would snowball that thing to $14,000 a month, and that would be a gross revenue of $150,000. See, here's the thing, right? Ultimately it's just revenue numbers, right? It doesn't mean anything. Like, how much do you actually take home at the end of the day? We always have to keep in mind the 4 numbers, right? Which is the gross revenue, right? And then the gross profit into the net profit, and then finally the take home, like after Uncle Sam is done with you. So the whole, like, big numbers and sales and stuff like that, that's,
comments down below. But after reselling full-time for 7 years, selling over 15,000 pieces of
Look at that.
inventory,
Look at that warehouse.
six-figure reselling business for many years, which actually peaked at a
Okay, so every single time I see numbers like these, I gotta invoke Big Yumbo for the audience, right? As always, guys, my loyalty and my empathy always lies with the audience, not the creator. And that's why I do these critique videos. So what does Big Yumbo show, right? He is very transparent with his stuff. That's why he gets a pass from me. So he did 260,000, and from the 260,000, he got to keep 86,000, not take home, just in net profit, right? So those are the actual numbers. So generally, it's always somewhere around like a third, you know what I mean? Because ups and downs, it's generally somewhere around a third, because the rest of it goes into, you know, all your costs and expenses and stuff. So when you look at $250,000, it's impressive at a glance, but ultimately, what happens at the end of the day? It's just a 5-figure salary.
$250,000 in sales.
So let's just call it what it is, 5
do.
figures.
But first I need to tell you something real quick. If you didn't watch my video last week, which I'll link up on the screen, Matt and I are launching Fern. Fern is the ultimate reselling business solution software that takes care of your cross-list.
I take no pleasure in saying this one. Fern, I don't know what happened to it. This video was 7 months ago. As of this video right now, fern.co, it doesn't work for me. And when I double check the traffic on it, it has about 8 attempts at visiting of visitors for this whole month. So it's very later on in this video, I'll show you guys how to check that kind of traffic. But yeah, I feel bad about this.
Your inventory management,
I don't know if it was hers.
Your analytics, all in one place. If you haven't already, head on over to fern.co. You can join the waitlist and I will notify you as soon as we go live in your inbox. I am so excited for y'all to try it out, and I cannot wait to hear what you think.
Yeah,
okay,
I feel bad.
Back to the video. So the first thing that we want to establish in order to come up with what I would do to get to 6 figures is my business model. This is the bedrock, the foundation upon which we build everything else. If you don't know what your business model is for your reselling business, I actually do have a video that I'll link up on the screen that's pretty helpful. But these are the stats that you're going to want to look to acquaint yourself with what your business model is and to set goals for what you want it to be. Okay, let's start with ASP, or average sales price. I would focus on, and it's a difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of intentionality, but I would focus on $100 average sales price.
I wholeheartedly agree with this, right? And I've said this before. If you're going to make it as a solo flipper, because for whatever reason you're insistent on being a flipper, then the best thing to do is that you have to go the route of value, because that's the only way you could keep the work at a minimum and your salary, your income at a maximum, right? You don't want to go the volume route because you're going to quickly hit a physical ceiling. Like, you know, you could only go to so many thrift stores, 55, and a whole bunch of flea markets apparently, and you could only do so many a day. 120 listed, 100, you know what I mean? Like, you can only do so many like every single day, right? So the more listings that you do, then you know it's a diminishing return, because it gets the amount that you need to charge yourself to do all of these listings, all of these photos and stuff. So if you could minimize that, right, then you have to maximize the ASP in order to get the same kind of return. But in order to do this, generally you also have to level up your knowledge as well, because, you know, items don't just magically, you know, worth more, right? Most items that are worth more are in a different category. Like when I did the whole episode on De Novo Flips, he does the good electronics, right? Between the Nest cameras and the Fluke meters. Those are very high-end things that hold their value very well. And he just happened to be able to find them in a place where he could source them for very, very low from people who are unwilling to ship to your average person, and they just don't really know what the value is. So that's where the opportunity is, right? That's where he found that. That's very different than going out into the world and let me see what's there and then doing my best on the fly.
I've recently made this decision for my own reselling business, and so far I really think it's the right one. If you want to hear about why I made that decision, I'll link the podcast episode that I did up on the screen. Mainly because if you focus on a business model with a lower ASP, you'll be stuck as a volume seller, which a lot of people are successfully, but for me at least, it leads to extreme burnout.
Right, see, we have the same value.
You will spend as much time in your reselling business, but that time will be allocated more towards sourcing proper inventory.
Right. So basically, Mogi's whole channel, right? I don't disagree with all of it. In fact, I agree with most of it. Okay. And honestly, it's been really fascinating to follow the channel for so long because I feel like a lot like Steve Irwin, right? Like this is like the reseller hunter, and it's like, like crikeys, and this is what the reseller is doing, et cetera, right? And honestly, the whole channel itself, it would inspire me to never be a reseller because there's actually so much transparency. There's actually so much, detail in what Mogi reveals to the audience, right? That if you pay attention to it carefully, there's so many subtle hints and things that she said that tells you, that warns you, don't do this, don't get into this. You'll see what I mean.
And you'll spend much less time processing that inventory and listing it. And at least for me, I love sourcing. That's why I got into reselling. I really don't love listing and photographing especially. So if I actually want to be consistent in my reselling business and I want to enjoy my path to 6 figures, I would choose a higher ASP. The next stat you want to look at is sell-through rate. Sell-through rate is a term that's thrown around a lot within the reselling community. In the eBay world,
so I pick on this a lot.
To a 90-day sell-through rate, and that's because that's a parameter that eBay arbitrarily chose to show sold data for. But within the context of this video, I'm talking about a monthly sell-through rate, which means the number of items that you sold within the month.
See, this is what I like about Mogi Beth, right? This is correct.
Divided by
what I mean? Somebody tell
inventory
Carrie
that you had in stock. So if you sold 20 pieces of inventory and you had 100 pieces of inventory in stock, that would be a 20% sell-through
There you
rate.
go.
Luckily,
Right, that's how it works.
I don't have to calculate sell-through rate in my business because I can use Vern to do that for me. It's a stat that's on the analytics page. For me, the sell-through rate that I would focus on is 30%. And
okay, there's a huge issue with this, right? The sell-through rate that you will focus on is 30%. Okay, so I've done this in an episode just before where we talk about like, look, resellers don't talk enough about the rollover percentage, right? The rollover rate, like what happens when stuff that you didn't sell rolls over to the next month and the next month over. Look, if you are talking about a target of 30% sell through, then you are also in acceptance of what? A 70% rollover. And that's scary because you don't know if that 70%, like how much of that 70% is going to, roll over again into month 3, into month 4, into month 5. And before you know it, that's exactly why you need like all these exit strategies to finally, you know what I mean, exit the item. So when you think about like, what the numbers are here, okay, the whole STR system is not a key performance indicator, KPI, if you will, of how well something moves if you are a reseller, because all of these SKUs are individual. They're all one-off items in one and done listings, right? So you can't compare one to one itself. There's nothing to compare to. So there's no analytics. There's no actual data. So what does that mean when you have the 30% STR? It means it is a 30% STR of the whole haul, no particular item, right? No item in particular. That's the problem. As opposed to if you had 300 units of the exact same thing, and then you sold 10 a day in 30 days, that's 300 units, you would be gone, right? So in order to have a 3-month supply, what do we need? We need 900 units. Better order 1,000 for the sake of buffering, just in case there is a little burst in sales. You see what I'm saying? That's how you like calculate things. That's something that you would use for projection. But STR is not a predictor of the future in reselling because of the nature of what reselling is, because everything is different. That's the one big problem here. So what happens to the 70% that rolls over month after month after month? In month 1, I get 100 items for the sake of simple math. I sold 30 of them, that's 30%, and then 70 rolls over. But in month 2, do I source another new 100 items? Do I get another new 100 item haul? And then what happens there? I sell 30 of that, and then 70 rolls over again. But what happens to the 70 items that rolled over from the first month into the second and then into the third? You tell me how many items would sell out of those 70 into the next amount. The problem with rollover here is about potency, the potential of stuff. The thing is that, like, within your 30-day frame period, which is the standard that we're using right now, anything that would have sold already would have proven itself that it's sold. High potential. Anything that doesn't sell, as every month goes by, proves that it doesn't sell, right? Because that's what happened. And therefore, low potential, low potency. So what happens is that the whole haul itself, we can now say that, like, it has a high potential of 30% and low potential of 70%. And that's why it rolled over. But we don't talk about this enough. Ultimately, when you are scrutinizing things from a lens of a real business, we use turnover rate. We never use STR. We want to know, does this thing sell 2 a day, 3 a day, 4 a day, 5 a day, and then multiply by how many days is how many I got to reorder. End of story. So a lot of people will tell me that, like, Peg, you're arguing this from, the lens of a private labeler versus what a reseller is, and that's apples to orange. No, that's not exactly correct. Well, I'm trying to tell you guys that this is absolutely apples to oranges, because I am an Apple dealer and you're trying to treat these businesses like apples, and they're not. They are oranges. These are hustles, and these hustles cannot be calculated like business. So when you take business lessons and knowledge from, like, the upper levels, and then you try to retrofit it over here, they don't work. And the reason why they don't work is because you didn't figure out the original sourcing issue, because nobody wants to do business like this in the long term. Businesses like this, okay, ultimately, what do we all have in common? Sourcing, processing, listing, shipping, right? So what is each step of the way? You're sourcing, you didn't fix it. You just went out and got one random thing. Hopefully it's going to sell, and then you try to sell it, right? As opposed to researching something and making sure, okay, this thing works. And then we go from proof of concept into proof of value. And then we try to get more of it, and we repeat this process over and over again. And now we have success. When it comes to processing, you're bringing it home, you're taking photos, et cetera, right? As opposed to getting more of something so that you only have to make the listing once, getting it produced from a factory, or buying it straight from a wholesaler. So there's no processing involved. They are ready to sell. And then when it comes to listing, we already took care of that, because we only need to make one good listing to snowball into momentum for every single item that we do. And then packing and shipping, we could either outsource it to things like Amazon FBA, or we could just hire people to help us pack and ship. We fix all those things. And that never happens in these, solo reseller kind of setups.
In my experience, a 30% sell-through rate is actually quite aggressive. It means that you're not only picking up items.
Okay, so this is what I mean by, like, the little nuggets that Mogi Beth drops, right? She goes, I'm looking for a 30% sell-through, which is actually quite aggressive. You see what I'm saying? So if you already thought to yourself, man, being able to sell 3 out of 10, is that good or bad, right? You see what I'm saying? Imagine buying 10 of anything and only being able to sell 3 of it, and then the other 7 is in an unknown place, right? Is that good or bad? And then having somebody who had been doing this for 7 years tell you that that is an aggressive, you know what I mean, estimation.
Items that will sell for $100, but you're picking up items that will sell for $100+ quickly. It's important not to overprice your items. It means you're accepting offers, even if you think you could sell it for a little bit more. And it means that you like to move it.
I like to move it.
Okay, so in order to get to a six-figure
We all
reselling
like to move
business
it.
with a $100 ASP and a 30% STR, you might be asking yourself the following question. How many pieces of inventory am I going to need? How many should I be listing each month? And how long is it going to take to get to six figures in sales? Okay, so let's take a look at this very important but often neglected equation for resellers. Your monthly sales revenue is equal to the number of pieces of inventory that you have times your average sales price times your sell-through.
Okay, so I just want everybody to take a look at this. I agree with this. This is actually correct. See, this is what drives me crazy about this channel, right? Like, Mogi knows what she's talking about here. When we're on the whiteboard, like, she knows what she's talking about, right? So why would you still do this business? That's what gets really strange.
Great. So let's do a little bit of algebra and find the number of pieces of inventory that we need. So first we'll need to figure out your monthly sales revenue. 100,000 divided by 12 is $8,333.33. That's what you're aiming to make in sales each and every month. $8,333.33 equals the number of inventory that you need to have times your ASP 100 times your sell-through rate 0.3. Do a little bit of algebra and you will come up with 277.77 pieces of inventory, or let's round up, 278 pieces of inventory. As most resellers can tell you, that's actually not that much inventory. You could store that amount of inventory on 3 shelving units, and there's a good chance that you have a place somewhere in your house to store 3 shelves. So you could easily run a 6-figure reselling business out of your own home. So the question is, how many listings should you be getting up each month? And that's a good question, and the answer really depends upon your resources. The thing about a high ASP business model is that it typically has higher COGS, or cost of goods.
I want you to keep in mind that she said this, right? Typically, a higher ASP has a higher cost of goods
Than your average reselling business model. It's typically pretty expensive to acquire items that will sell for $100 plus. You can easily rack up an average cost of goods of $20, for instance. $20 times 278 pieces of inventory equals $5,560.
Whoa. You just said like, average, you did a higher cost of goods in order to the $20 to $100 is 5xing your money in a really bad bracket. Okay, so essentially, right, like, you could always go to a flea market or something and then, find like $1 items and then be able to get lucky and then flip it for like $10 or something like that. So there you go. I just 10x my money. The problem with 10xing your money is that ultimately it's still just a $10 sale. That's what the issue is, right? Versus what De Novo Flips does, where he risks $150 on an item and then immediately within 24 to 48 hours sells it for $250, making the $100 in between and then minus different kinds of expenses. And he's totally willing to do this because what? The risk is minimal, because he already calculated the fact that this thing is going to sell in under 72 hours for sure. In fact, he's never had anything that sat for over 72 hours, because what he does is his research first, properly do your homework, and then go out and then make sure you're going to, well, actually, he doesn't even go anywhere. He has it mailed to him. But the point is that he hunted down the item and he made sure he got that item. So if you want consistent results, you have to not just work consistently, but you have to consistently get the same things that produce the same result. We have to get really specific with our language here. So every single time when you listen to Daily Refinement, and then he says, like, if you want consistency, you just gotta like consistently get more stuff. Why would you have consistent results if you consistently get different things? That doesn't make any sense. And that's what's happening here too.
That's definitely not chump change. Most of us don't have an extra $5,560 laying around that we can just throw into a business.
Okay, so here's where I make the argument, right? I am not looking at this as just a private labeler. I am looking at this like a true business owner. If you knew that all the stuff that you get is definitely going to flip within the 72 hours like De Novo Joe is, then what does it matter if it's $5,000? Borrow, pull it out of your credit card, get a loan, sign a check. It doesn't matter, because you're going to get it back in 72 hours. But that's not what's happening here, right? These are high risk items, to the point where what? it is aggressive to assume that even 30% of, the 278 items or whatever is going to sell. That's what I mean. The whole channel has a lot of devils in the details, all these nuggets that Mogi drops herself, that when you listen to it, you should never do this, and you should never do, even according to her own information. That's what makes this channel like just so interesting.
To get started, but you don't have to have $5,500 in order to build $100,000.
By her own advice, you should not do reseller,
and then aggressively reinvest until you get to 278 listings. And then
that would mean
point,
starving to aggressively
listings,
reinvest.
You should have a well-oiled machine of a reselling business. And then if you're happy to stop growing.
Okay. We got to listen to that one more time, okay? Because I hideously disagree with this because of the argument of potency. So I think I overdid it right here.
Listings. And then at that point, once you get to 278 listings, you should have a well-oiled machine of.
Why would you have a well-oiled machine? That makes no sense. Because it is very different to have 278 items freshly sourced versus an accumulation of 278 items that rolled over month to month to month. It didn't sell month to month previously. Why would it sell now? See, here's the thing, right? If you have an item, okay, that's sold 10 units every day, then it is logically reasonable to assume that it will sell another 10 units tomorrow if this has done so for the past, 30, 60, 90 days. Like, it's been selling 10 every single day for the past 90 days. So I'm pretty sure on day 91, it'll probably still sell 10, right? But if you have an assortment of items behind you that didn't sell for, this one didn't sell for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, into 14 months. If you're a auction professor, you have stuff that didn't sell for 12 years. Why would you assume that they would sell tomorrow or the month afterwards? That's what I'm talking about. The potency is not there anymore. So this whole statement, in my opinion, becomes fallacious.
A reselling business. And then if you're happy to stop growing at that $100,000 mark, you can reinvest what you need and then pocket the rest. If you're truly starting out at $100, like this thought experiment suggests, I would first go around my house and try to find anything and everything that I could sell in order to create some startup capital. So let's say you're able to sell some things laying around the house and scrape up $400, and then you reinvest 100%.
Yeah, I don't think you would need to, because before she said, like, you have to aggressively reinvest into the thing. So if you're going to aggressively reinvest, that means you don't take a penny out of it. That means that you need to have some other form of sustainability on the side, like a side job or something like that. So do you really have to flip a whole bunch of stuff from home? No, you should do it for the sake of practice, making listings and building your initial muscle. But it's really not so much about like the starting capital, because you're going to be aggressively, reinvesting into this business, right? So that would suggest you probably should not quit your day job. And then you could pretty much, get extra money to fund this from your day job, if this is the path that we're going to go down.
Everything you make until you get to your goal. It would take you a little over 7 months in order to get to 270.
Right. So right here, right, she's telling you that you're going to starve for 7 months in order to do this. Why not just take this whole 7 months and then do firm research instead of just doing like, sold comps on the fly and stuff like that? Why don't you just do proper research? Why don't you just look into solving a real problem and then getting in contact with the factory, work on prototyping, learn how to 3D print something in 7 months, right? Pick up a skill, get expertise in something, really, learn something, as opposed to doing something like this where you're going to heavily reinvest and not take a penny out of it. And then what does it set you up for? It sets you up for pretty much a lifetime of hard labor, okay? As opposed to, traditional businesses where you would just look into, how do I solve an issue for somebody in order to trade for a premium? Now, if I'm going to translate that into tangible goods for e-commerce, then how do I produce an item that solves that solution for people, that betters people's lives, that enriches that, whatever people are looking for, and then people are willing to open up their wallets to me. Now, we could allow the listing to start to snowball as it gets more and more conversions, right? So the more that you sell every single day, the more you move up in the rankings, just like I showed you with the travel neck pillows. The guy was like, ranked like 100 something, like 300 something. And then the other one where he was ranked like 31 or something like that. And that one sold 2,700 units in a month, right? This is the kind of business that actually compounds over time, right? And many times when resellers talk about like, yeah, your efforts definitely compound in reselling. No, that's just you becoming a better employee, right? I know how to make listings faster. I know how to take photos faster. I know brands better. Yeah, you're now a more valuable employee in your own business than you were before. What does the business earn? The business has no equity itself because you don't have high ranking listings, so that the same item, right, in my hand, okay, like the same calculator in my hand moves 10 a day. I give you this calculator, you just go make a brand new listing with it. You might move this after 3 weeks. That's very, very different.
Listings and hit your monthly sales goal. At which point you would just need to source and list 83 pieces of inventory every month in order to hit your goals. And if you
right, but again, right, 83 pieces at $20, that could definitely 5x. So that means you have to at least be able to guess correctly 83 times in a row, $20 items that can 5x into the sale. Oof.
your average cost of goods was $20, then you would just need to spend about $1,660 in order to replenish that inventory every month. And then after fees and shipping, etc., you can pocket the rest. That sounds easy enough, right? Why isn't everyone doing this?
All right, so this is the other video that she had that says like, I spent $1,200 on ThreadUp over here. So I want you to listen to the start of this.
About a month ago, I spent over $1,200 on ThreadUp sourcing items to sell on Poshmark and eBay. This is my new favorite way to source, but did it pay off? Today, we're doing a ThreadUp haul where I show you everything that I got back in July. And then I'm also going to tell you how those items performed about 30 days later.
Okay, so if we scroll over here, this is the actual results on the screen, okay? So here's the issue. She's still in the red at the end of the day, okay? So with the 1,200 items, the $1,200, she bought 27 items. And out of those 27 items, she sold 13 of them. So almost half, okay, just slightly under. And then when you think about the cost of goods, it was $12.60 and 42 cents. And then when she sold the 13 items, they totaled, okay, $1,174.68. So this looks like something like $80, like $85, like still in the hole, right? Yeah, we have a big problem here, right? So, never mind the numbers that we got at the bottom, okay? That's this plus $400 is not what you think it is. This is exactly what happened, when I did the critique video on the Resale Brothers, right? Of like, 5 different ways to make $1,000, where you could sell like, 50 $20 items or 20 $50 items or 10 $100 items or something like that. It was just like 5 different ways to slice a pie, and ultimately the problem with what they're talking about is what she spent $1,200 and then she did $1,100 in sales. So technically she gets to make a video alongside the Resale Brothers of like, how I made $1,000 in sales. Right, but you're still 80 something dollars in the hole. And that was exactly the whole criticism of everything that the Resale Brothers says, right? Of like how you can make whatever, but you're still in the hole because of all the money that you have tied up in the goods that's still sitting there. So where is this $400 coming from? Well, it's coming from the fact that like, if she never picked up the other 14 that didn't sell and just the 13, but again, right? How would you know that it was the 13 out of the 14 that would sell in the 30 days if you didn't pick up all 27? That's always the argument. And that's exactly what Carrie at Home did in her other, anchor video, right? That like, if you didn't buy these and you only bought these, then you wouldn't have the money tied up with goods. But again, how would you have known that unless you picked up everything and then find out? And then by then you can't return it. So now you're stuck with it. And the ones that you're stuck with, you now have to come up with an exit strategy for. So this is exactly what's happening here, right? The $460 comes from profit of the 1174, but that would only put you in the green if you didn't buy the other 14. That's what we don't talk about enough on these reseller channels. Oh, and I also wanted to point out that, like, look, her average sale over here is $100 ASP, and yet this is what the business currently is, right? So how many of the 14 items will sell into month 2, into month 3, into month ever? We don't know. And we can't calculate an XTR until it's actually sold. So again, STR is not a predictive metric. It is a aftermath kind of thing.
Well, the answer to that question is this, and I can already hear it in the comment section. It actually isn't that easy to find inventory that will sell for $100 plus quickly. For the vast majority of us, we're not going to be able to find that type of inventory if
So this is, again, it drops another nugget about how, like, we're not going to find those things. It's not even about hard anymore. It's that the most of the time you're not going to find that $20 item that's just going to 5x into $100 sales.
we stop into our neighborhood Goodwill for a few hours a week, which admittedly, myself included, is what most resellers do. Most resellers go to the same thrift stores week after week for about the same amount of time each week, and they just sell the best stuff that they come across, which isn't wrong. And you can build a business model that way, but it is going to pigeonhole you in an average sales price of about $25 to $60 depending on where you live. And again, you can create a 6-figure business sourcing that way, but you'll have to commit 2 or 3 or 4 times more time and effort into processing, photographing, listing, inventorying, and shipping. And as a solo reseller, that can be really draining, and it's really easy to become inconsistent. So instead, if you want to adopt a business model like this one, there are 2 things that you need to do that very few resellers actually do on a consistent basis. Number 1 is research. Number 2 is switching from a passive sourcing strategy to a more proactive sourcing strategy.
Okay, so you guys already know I am obsessed with the how. So when she said a proactive sourcing, my eyes lit up. I was like, yes, yes. Let me hear, like I will totally not even do this video if this was a good answer. And this is exactly what the problem is, right? I can't stand it when people say things like if you ask them, tell them like the inefficiencies of reselling. I had a guy who said to me, yeah, but was able to overcome those inefficiencies. I was like, really, how? And he's like, by leveraging AI. I'm like, right, how? And he's like, I just told you how, by leveraging AI. You know what I mean? Like when you have those circular answers like that, like I'm even more mad because you wasted my time. But listen to what she has to say over here, because I was super excited.
Instead of being entirely subjected to whatever is donated to your local thrift store that week, you instead need to become laser focused on the type of inventory that you're looking for, and then
yes, laser focused on the type of inventory you're looking for. This is exactly what DeNovo Joe does, right? Opens up the search to 500 miles. He is looking for a short list of good items that's going to flip very quickly, that holds very good value. Profit First Reseller Joe does the exact same thing in a different way, right? Which is he figured out exactly what sells in his store consistently, and now he's going to build, develop oil spots. So he has 10 different vendors that he could source video game electronics in bulk so that he could constantly keep his good listings alive. And then he does that over and over again. He has significantly reduced his sourcing down to only 5%, and then his processing goes up. But he enjoys, cleaning and, doing videos and stuff. So really good for him. But the idea is, this is what we're talking about. Proactive sourcing. Very, very good. Let's hear it.
Be resourceful in figuring out how to acquire that type of inventory.
Yes, we have to hunt it down. How do we acquire it?
My business is by going to buy-sell trade stores. I go to primarily Buffalo Exchange and Crossroads Trading.
Yo, you just went from one thrift store to another thrift store. How is this proactive? You're still getting things on the fly. These are not things that you could pre-research and then hunt them down. You're still showing up to Crossroads and then let's see what they have. Nothing's changed. you just said you were gonna do proactive sourcing. Like what happened? Like my voice is going up because I'm just so dumbfounded by this.
Which
Like
are two chain
this
companies that exist in different locations throughout the United States. And in order to keep my cost of goods low, I'll go to Goodwill Outlet.
and then you're back in the bins again. Like, what? How is this any different than what you just said before about, like, you know, you could just go out and then you just get whatever, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But here's what you should do. You should be laser focused and
Buy a bunch of stuff there.
And then here we are again.
Buy-sell trade stores. They'll buy a lot of that stuff from me, give me a credit, which subsidizes my inventory.
What am I missing here?
Additionally, I've just started sourcing another way that I'm super excited about that you can do anywhere in the country, and I'm creating a video on it soon, so stay tuned for that. But there's also retail arbitrage.
I thought we're already doing retail arbitrage. This is pretty much retail arbitrage, right? I mean, you know, because essentially thrift stores are retailing it to you. So it's still a type. I mean, it's not the same as, like, you know, being first in line for like all the Pokemon stuff and like getting like, you know, 30 sets of the latest like Monopoly, like, you know, Valentine's edition or something like that, or Legos, and then holding it up. It's not that kind of retail arbitrage, but this is still some form of, you know, arbitrage curation and dealing with retail stores.
You can network and find consignment clients. You can do garage sales in the nicer part of town. You can watch liquidation sellers.
See, here's the problem, right? Like, when you guys click on all of these business channels, right? What are you looking for? I imagine that you're looking for what? Strategy, right? But all I'm hearing when I listen to this, right, is more work, right? More backbone, more sweat, more tears, more blood. We want to know, like, smarter ways. Like we all resonate with, you know, the common saying, work smarter, what not harder, right? But this, you know, that you could go here, that you could visit these places, that you could visit these places, like all on foot, just more grunt work. So
whatnot, and so many more options that just
can't recommend this
trial
stuff
and error to find. The point is, if you want to adopt this business,
you know what I mean? So Profit First Joe, he doesn't go anywhere. He makes a couple of phone calls and stuff gets shipped to him, right? The Novo Joe, he doesn't go anywhere, right? He scours and then he writes emails and then he finagles his sellers to finally sell stuff to him at excellent prices where he could make the opportunity in between. So it's just so different than, like, see, here's the thing, right? Both of their businesses are very close to my business. Like, it's getting there, right? It's getting there with, like, you know, the sourcing correction. And that's the correct way of doing things, where you recognize that, you know, the obstacle is the path, right? That's what Marcus Aurelius teaches us. The obstacle is the way. So what is the obstacle right here? What is the biggest bottleneck? The obstacle is the sourcing, and you're not actually correcting the sourcing to the point where you even talked about proactive sourcing, and then what was the answer? The answer was just to go from, you know, Goodwill to Crossroads. That's not an
model. You have to be scrappy, proactive, constantly trying out new sourcing methods instead of just waltzing into your neighborhood Goodwill and hoping for the best. And again,
or going to Crossroads.
I've said this enough times, I think, throughout this video, but this is what I would do. It is not what you have to do or what anyone has to do. You can be a very successful reseller, and many people are.
I know, but the problem is that this is not just about an opinion. This is about, like, her own logic doesn't add up to, like, the advice that she's trying to give. That's why I picked on this particular video.
Doing a completely different business model. Every business model has pitfalls, and this one does too. It will take a little bit longer in order to take money out of your business. For instance, if you go 7 months working day in and day out on your reselling business, not to ever take a single dollar out, that can...
Right, so we need to mention that, like, what? You need some other kind of, you know, supplemental income, right? Basically, don't quit your day job, or how is this supposed to happen? So I would probably just keep my day job and then just not get into this, because I don't feel as if, like, I'm riding a donkey to find a horse. It's not like from one to better, right? I'm not trading up here. That's what the issue is.
It can be draining. And if you would rather start seeing the dollar signs in your bank account, there's other business models that provide that. but those are a lot more work and can lead to burnout.
I think she's talking about things like Uber Eats or like DoorDash and like, you know, Lyft or something like that.
Like I said, it just depends on what you want, but this is what I would do. And I think it's really important to approach your reselling business knowing what you're doing with intentionality, making sourcing decisions that align with your chosen business model, and being clear about what trajectory your reselling business is currently on, and being clear about the trajectory you want it to be on. Okay, let me circle back to something that I brought up earlier, and that is research. As with any business, and as a reseller, you are running a business, it's really important to know who your customer is. And every business model is going to have a slightly different customer.
Yeah, but I would argue that like if you are only moving 30% out of the things that you select, you don't really know your customer, do you? Right? If you know, just going by that sentence, okay, I'm gonna get this, and this. Why? Because I know my customer. Then they should all sell because that's what your customer wants, right? So therefore, it would put you in the boat of what? I make my money when I buy because I already have my customer. I already know what they want. I already have pre-orders. I already have like a contract. I already have a deal. I already know them. You know what I mean? I'm predictive of what they're going to buy. And then what? And then it's only 30%. And even at 30%, that is a very optimistic, aggressive number, right? So what are we talking about here? This is what I mean. In the same video, the same logic, right? So all of these nuggets of truth, you gotta watch out for it. And it's basically screaming at you, don't do this business.
This is one of the main things that separates a professional reseller from a hobby reseller.
No, it's wishful thinking.
Research is especially important for a higher
because
ASP
this makes no sense that you only did 30%.
Who are paying $100 plus for a pre-owned clothing item are typically going to be brand and trend conscious. And the brands and trends that are selling for a lot of money quickly are constantly changing. I talked about how I research Bolo brands in my Bolo brands video that I did recently.
Okay, think about this for a moment, right? So we have a huge contrast in stuff, right? As a reseller, you are very brand dependent because you need that kind of traffic, right? Because the brand itself is a heavily searched keyword, and that keyword is what helps your listings gain any traction whatsoever. Okay, so when you think about what I'm doing with these, like, you know, travel neck pillows and stuff, right? Okay, so what happens? I build up the momentum and people need travel neck pillows. And then when they see travel neck pillows and then they see a better version of something, they're going to say, huh, let me give this a little gander, right? And as a couple of them pick it up, more success begets more success. And then before you know it, your item moves up to, you know, place number 100, 99, 70, 30, until he got into 31st place and he sells like over 2,000 units every single month. But what is happening here with like the brands and stuff is that you have to, is she saying, right? Like, hey, you know, the 10 hottest brands here, there, the season keeps on changing and you have to keep up with all this knowledge. And then at the end of the day, what are you doing it for? You're doing it for one-off sales. Is that really worth it? You know, the amount of research. Why don't you just spend all this time researching brands into just like one item? And if you built up a really good listing of one item of the, you know, neck travel pillows, which is clearly solving a problem that a lot of people can relate with, how long can you keep on doing this for? And how often do you need to learn about Bolo brands versus how often do you need to innovate in neck pillows? You see what I'm saying? The amount of effort for the long-term gain versus the amount of effort in reselling for short-term wins, you know what I mean? It's just so night and day. And yet at the same time, when you think of everything a reseller sells, everything a human being is surrounded by are all private label items. The camera that I use, the light, my monitors, like everything, right? This microphone right here, this is all a private label item of somebody's creation. Everything is. But yet, instead of realizing that that's exactly where the money is, we're going to do this super inefficient thing this way, right? Now, I get it. In the beginning, you don't know what you're doing. So you need a low barrier entry thing to do. But she's been doing this for 7 years on just the YouTube portion of it. Who knows how long even before YouTube? You see what I'm saying? So all the time that's being put into this, what has it compounded to? That's what I worry for people. You know, this is time that we'll never get back. So don't let weeks turn into years.
I'll link that up on the screen. However, it's also really important to research what people are shopping for in traditional retail stores now. And you can do this by, going onto Shopbop or going onto revolve.com and browsing what styles, what brands people are shopping for now.
Right. But after you did this research, did you go hunt down this specific thing so that you could have that result and see if that result, your speculation, right? That like, okay, so right now what we're looking at, right? Like this frame, mother, Pamela Munson, Good American. I don't know anything about this stuff, right? But according to Mogi Beth, she said, like, look around over here. Okay, let's assume I get these 4 items that we're just looking at right now, okay? And then I go ahead and I just get like, 1 sample of each, and let me just go ahead and see what happens. And lo and behold, 2 of them sell. So I'm going to go back here and then go get another 2 and then see if I could do it again, and I could do it again. And then I found out that like, wow, this is really repeatable. Now I want to come back and get like, 200 or 300 pieces of the same thing, right? And then do it over and over again. And that's business. So if we do this kind of research with the whole idea of laser focus, are we going to go hunt it down like heat-seeking missiles and just hunt this thing down? No, that's not what happens. We end up going to crossroads, and then it's like whatever they got, and then we do soul comps on the fly.
You can
so counterintuitive.
Magazines, you can watch fashion influencers.
But you know what to do, but you're not doing it.
There are a variety of ways of staying attuned to what is selling well now. And again, I want to put an asterisk here that what's showing up on the runway is not necessarily what's showing up in what people are actually wearing day to day. I wouldn't equate those two necessarily, but there's definitely research you can do to look for what the average $100 plus customer is looking for. And this baseline knowledge of what's selling well now is really important as you head into the thrift store or the buy sell trade store or the garage sale. But of course you're going to come across what you come across. And so it's really, really important to always check comps. If you're paying up for anything, check comps. It's your best.
This is what I mean, like research on the fly, right? So here's the thing about comps, right? We all know, number one, that this is a roundabout way to, binary. Should I make a decision? Thumbs up, pick up, or leave, right? So when you press anybody on the soul comps thing, everybody, every creator, every reseller, every private label, like, will all tell you unanimously, we agree that that's not all there is to it. There's so many other factors involved. So when, Profit First Reseller Joe does his research to like, I listed it this way, I listed it that way, I did all these things, and then finally the one that took off, that's the one I'm going to repeat over and over again, right? With DeNovo Joe, he's going to go ahead and research something. Okay, what is the value of this thing? What is, where could I find this stuff? Where could I consistently, you know what I mean? You answer like a whole bunch of these questions, which is so much more than what soul comps is, right? So therefore, you are relying on some roundabout way on the fly of doing. Why would you have good results? You see what I'm saying? It's not that soul comps doesn't work, but rather it doesn't yield very good results. That's what the problem is. It works sometimes, right? As opposed to these two guys, as well as myself, who do a ton of research at home, testing, trying things, making sure our concepts works. And then we repeat that process over and over again. And where does the success come from? The success comes from the ability to repeat that same process of success over and over again that equates to actual success. It's so counterintuitive to do business any other way. And this is why I'm highly against anybody who's saying, right, like, there's no wrong way of doing business. Pegasus is not correct, blah, 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 whatever. if you're making money, you're doing something right. If you're not making money and being able to repeat the success over and over again, right? If you're doing inefficient things, then it's not correct. So when it comes to the idea of like, okay, I'm going to try this item and then see if it sticks. If it works, I'm going to go get more of it. And then we're going to repeat this over and over again. And then when it starts to get more momentum, we're going to order more of it and go. My question is, how else would you play this hand? At the end of the day, right? If this was like a poker hand, how else would you play this hand other than in this exact progression? That's the problem, right? So I don't want to hear this nonsense about like, there's many ways to do business. No, this is the only way to do business. If you're going to do business in selling tangible goods on e-commerce online, then it is about proving the concept and then being able to replicate it. Nothing more.
And it takes 1 minute. I know it's tedious, I know it's boring, but it's really important to just do it. Okay, so that's my business model. Again, it's the foundation upon which I'm going to build my house, and it's really important to establish it, but it's not everything. There are a bunch of very important other things that you need to focus on in order to build a successful reselling business. And of course, I'll continue to dedicate videos to those things as well. But for now, here's a quick list of a few things I would do in order to grow my 6-figure reselling business efficiently. First of all, you've got to get a business bank account. If you don't already have this, make it a priority. It's really important to keep your business expenses separate from your personal expenses. It will make everything down the road as you build your reselling business easier. Next.
So kind of wrong to mix all right, I'm not going to get into it. You guys already know.
You must have an inventory storage solution. I'll be creating a video about mine soon. Next,
guys, I just want to point out, right, that the whole like inventory solutions and all that stuff, right, it's great. It's great stuff, okay? But sometimes we really need to think about the difference between planning and strategy, okay? And most people in their businesses needs more strategy. And what strategy? It is, the will to try, the room to fail at the same time. Many times when we think about like winning and failing and stuff like that, we equate that with a person walking home because look, he failed, so then he went home. Okay. But that's really not the constructive side of what failing actually is, right? Failing is a lot closer to skateboarding. I tried to grind this bench and then I fell and then I fell and I fell and I fell like 100 times. And then I finally cleared the trick. That's what failing is. So it's funny to say, but it's kind of like failing upwards, right? Like I failed until I didn't fail anymore. And that's the story that we don't talk about enough, So when it comes to, trying to make something happen, right? Trying to get things to stick, trying to prove a concept. That's what makes the whole thing worth it. So that like once we're able to do this, we have to be able to replicate it so our efforts compound. That way it's not a waste. It's not a waste of our time. We could do things in business for the sake of growth that doesn't make any money in the beginning, but eventually we are going to get there. So the same idea, right? Like she said in the beginning where, 7 months, we keep reinvesting in the business, stuff like that. See, all those business concepts are correct. But the problem is that you are 7 months into it. And now this is a business that doesn't actually compound over time, doesn't actually build equity over time. If you were ever to get rid of this business, all your business would be worth is pennies on the dollar for the leftover inventory that nobody is sure if it's going to sell or not because you were the one who originally sourced it.
I do believe it's important to cross-list your items to the 3 biggest reselling platforms in the United States, which are eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari. Each one of these platforms has different customer bases. And so while there is some overlap, there's a lot of people who only buy from eBay. There are a lot of people who only buy from Poshmark and Mercari. So
okay, I disagree with this, right? Because it is about overall, efficiency, right? And this is what I'm saying, right? From my lens to her lens, okay, the best way for me to prove this is this. Number one, okay, eBay is way bigger than Poshmark or Mercari. I don't care what kind of customer it is, eBay is so much bigger, right? So therefore, you should basically just list to eBay and then use cross-listing as your exit strategy. Because if your item was going to sell within 72 hours anyways, what was the point of putting all that extra energy into cross-listing? That's the issue, okay? So in order to do that, we're going to jump on another screen and I'm going to teach you guys how to check website traffic. All right, guys, so this is a website called Ahrefs, and it is a website traffic checker, okay? Now, most website traffic checkers, you have to pay for them, and I'm very big on the free tools and stuff. You know what? I will do a video where I just show you like all of my free tools so that like, you know, everybody can have free tools to like, you know, get around with life and stuff like that, right? They're all very, very useful. So real quick, I just want to show you that I did a traffic check real quick for Fern, so that you can see here it's fern.co. And then when you look, right, in August, there was like 8 visits, and July, there was like no visits according to this website over here, okay? So here we're going to go ahead and just type in stuff, right? So I'm just going to put eBay like this, okay? And then we're going to check the traffic. So ebay.com. So it's going to check ebay.com and all of its subdomains, right? And then I'll over here put in, what was it? Poshmark.com, right? And then we'll check that. And then we'll do a little Mercari.com, right? And then just for the funsies, right? I'm going to put like Amazon.com, just so that like you could really feel it. So let's jump back over here and then I could show you, right, that it says ebay.com. What is August's visit? It is 66.6 million people, okay? That's how much traffic, right? Keep that in mind. Now, let's go over to Poshmark. It is 2.1 million, okay? So eBay is 30 times more than Poshmark. There we go, okay? So Mercari, right? So less than a million, right? So it's about 700,000 visits. 700,000 visits for Mercari, okay? 2 million for Poshmark, 65 million for eBay. Now, you guys ready for the Amazon one? Bang, okay? 430 million. It says 433.7 million visits on Amazon. Guys, if you're already able to make eBay work, come see me and I'll help you make Amazon work, right? You're talking about 10 times the results over there. Not only, you know, more visits, but people are not window shoppers as they are on places like eBay, and definitely even more window shopping on the smaller websites. All right, guys, time for a little bit of final thoughts. So at the end of the day, when people use the term treat it like a business, the question is how? How do you treat it like a business? How do you personally treat it like a business? And it can't just be all vibes. We need real strategies in order to actually move the needle forward. It can't just be like, okay, I have a better inventory system. I write thank you notes. Those are not things that actually help you get the sale, right? So in the first step of all of our businesses in dealing in tangible goods, it is all about the sourcing strategy. So in both Profit First Reseller and De Novo, they have done something to really enhance the sourcing strategy, just like how I'm a private labeler and my sourcing strategy comes from dealing with factories directly. It's really something to think about, because once you correct that, that's what starts to enhance like all the steps afterwards. Anyways, guys, that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a big like. And if you learned something, please consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.